Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Wow. As much as I agree that you can't be too picky at a food bank or pantry, I want to emphasize that you, or anyone, cannot and should not attempt to eat rotten food. It's not hard to spot rotten food, and her insisting that you are ungrateful is insane. Blacklisted at food pantry. I've been pretty lucky that I've not had to utilize food pantries, but the past 6 months have been hell. There should be no shame at all because food insecurity really sucks. I've never been hungrier lately. Today, I decided to go to a drive-up food pantry. There were 5 different spots you could drive up to that had pallets of different foods. As pathetic as it sounds, I was happy. At each spot, they loaded a case or 2 into your car. After I was through, I parked at the opposite side of the parking lot. I had some time to kill before I had to get fingerprinted for my new teaching job. I passed the same man a couple of blocks from my house who's always holding a "want food, not money" sign. I've never had anything to spare, so I figured since I just got so much food, I'd go through the boxes and pick him out a few things. There was a box that had 12 packages of soft tortilla shells, and despite the expiration date, I was excited because I also got a huge case of sweet potatoes. I love carbs and I love tacos. The extras will freeze well. Again, pathetic, but I was excited. I opened the case up and it contained 6 bags of sweet potatoes. I immediately noticed the bags are sticky and smell very odd. I start going through the first bag and notice the potatoes have started sprouting, which is no big deal. Just cut those off, but then I see the mold. I genuinely thought I should let them know so more rancid potatoes weren't given out. I get in my truck and pull back around, and the lady in charge starts yelling at me that I can't go through twice. I pull off to the side and tell her I'm not trying to do that. I just wanted to tell her about the expired food. She immediately gets defensive and tells me to prove it. I open the box and she says, "Oh, hang on." She brings me back a paper that has instructions on how to can vegetables and tell me my box should have had one. Thinking back now, I think whoever packaged the cases didn't include it because the case was bad. I tried to lighten the tension by laughing a little and said, "That's great, but this case is obviously rotten. We can't can rotten vegetables." Her, "Root vegetables don't get rotten." Me, "You can clearly see the liquid dripping out of the bottom. Here, look for yourself." Her, "That isn't my job. I'm just here to give food out," with the most condescending tone and attitude. Me, "Oh, okay. Well, do you think it's okay if I just toss the case in that dumpster? My trash at home is almost full." She starts screaming, "Throw it away? You wouldn't throw food away right in front of us." Me, Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend anyone. "I think what you're doing is great. I just wanted to let you know." She goes up to my truck and opens the back door and starts tossing out the other boxes I got. I told her there was nothing wrong with the rest of it, and she told me it was all or nothing deal, and if I want to pick and choose, I could go to a grocery store. She took a picture of my license plate and a picture of me and told me I wasn't welcome to come back. I just stood there in shock. I've never had someone get so defensive over damn potatoes. Mushy, moldy, musty sweet potatoes are no good, but I should have kept my mouth shut. I guess beggars really can't be choosers, even if the food is visibly rancid. Update. I attempted to report her. It took a few days to get in contact with the pantry. I called and I'm 99.9% sure the woman on the other line was the same woman. I suspected she was in charge by the way she was confidently being a bee to me in front of the other volunteers. I was told that they had the right to deny anyone who doesn't bring valid ID or prove they are a resident of the county, or if they abuse or take advantage of the food pantry. It's the beggar's responsibility to inspect all food given before they consume. She said food doesn't ever really go bad, and if the beggar thinks otherwise, they aren't hungry enough. The last thing she said was everything is free and donated, so the beggar has nothing to lose. I guess gas, hope, and time doesn't count? No, she didn't use the word beggar, but she might as well have. And our second story. I'm the delivery guy, not a porch pirate. My husband and I both work for Amazon Flex, which has freelance drivers deliver packages to different areas that are a little off the beaten path. This way everyone, even those who live in tiny forgotten towns that are surrounded by cornfields, will get their packages in a timely manner. Today, my husband, who I'll refer to as husband, was doing a block in such an area. It's early in the day and the car's full of packages when he entered small town. It was the kind of place that had a post office, a gas station, an old mill, and a sheriff. It's the place where everyone knows everyone because they're all related by blood or marriage. So when husband starts making stops at houses in town in an unfamiliar car, everyone noticed. Husband doesn't even realize he's being watched. It's just another stop on his delivery route. Then he goes to drop a package at a house at the end of a dead-end road. He does the drop at the door, sends the notice to the customer that the package has been delivered, and gets back in the car to go to the next stop. Except the road is now being blocked by a sheriff's car. Husband stops and sheriff approaches him, telling him that he'd received some calls about him, a suspicious man that was going from house to house and had packages in his vehicle. Husband gives him his ID and tells him, "I work for Amazon. I just delivered a package to that house back there. These other packages are for other customers." Sheriff takes a look at husband's ID, then his phone to take a look at the app. The sheriff looks at his own phone before going to the house husband just left to see if the package was there. Sheriff then looks past husband and sees someone watching them. Husband described the look sheriff gave the person as a mix of course, and "Are you effing with me?" Sheriff then tells husband that he'd been accused of being a porch pirate before stomping past husband to scream at the person watching them. Sheriff apparently not only knew the person who called to report husband as a porch pirate, but the delivery husband had just done was to the sheriff at his house. Sheriff went off on the nosy neighbor about don't they have anything better to do, wasting police time, and how, yes, he was sure that husband was telling the truth since he'd received the delivery notice on his phone and the package was on his porch. Sheriff came back to husband, thanked him for his time, and sent him on his way. Husband was annoyed that he was held up for over 20 minutes, but I think this story was worth it. And our next story. Customer said, "I must not know my boss very well." Pretty great story from work this morning. So I'll start by saying I work for my dad at a store. I work the front counter and interact with most people/customers. Also, I look a lot more like my mom. My dad runs a separate business as well, but anybody who needs to talk to him for either business can usually find him in the office here. So this guy shows up this morning looking pretty ruffled and asks if my dad was here. I replied, "You just missed him. He's out for the morning doing a couple of things." He was very displeased by this information and was acting very loud and unprofessional. He started looking around the store and eventually came back to the front counter with a piece of equipment that he wanted to trade for some work that he apparently did for him before. Keep in mind, I know most of my dad's workers and have never seen this guy before. I told him that I don't do any negotiations while he's not here and I can't just let him leave the store with something for free. I told him that normally he probably wouldn't want to take that route, but he was welcome to discuss it with him once he's back. He looked at me and replied, "You must not know blank very well, because he would do this for me, and blah, blah, blah." I just looked at him and replied, "I actually do know him quite well, seeing as he's my father." He kind of looked up at me and was pretty speechless. I could tell he felt stupid and regretted his comment. He ended up waiting around for my dad to show up, and guess what? He wasn't going to do a trade. Apparently the guy worked like 2 days for him and then quit. Plus the thing he wanted was way more expensive than what he was owed. Side note, the pay wasn't made yet because we're bi-weekly. I swear, some of the people around here are nuts. But a "don't you know who I am" moment made my day. And our last story. 100-plus-year-old live oak tree on my property line cut down by builder. Recently, a home builder purchased the property next to mine. On the property line was a massive live oak tree whose branches extended over most of my house. It was a large part of why I purchased the home. When it became clear that the builder had the intention to cut down the tree, I retained the services of an attorney who had a survey done. While the survey does indicate that the majority of the tree base, maybe 80%, was on the neighbor's property, it was indisputably on the property line. With the previous neighbor, we always split care for the tree evenly, because while the trunk always seemed a bit more on his side, the very large canopy was more on my side. After some initial discussions in which they first offered me $500 to plant a smaller tree on my property that would retain the tree, their lawyer sent a letter stating that they would begin cutting back the limbs to the property line and that they may need to trespass onto my property to ensure this was done safely. I did not agree to any of this, and we filed for a temporary restraining order, which was denied by the court. Houston is very much an owner's rights jurisdiction. The builder then did as stated and cut back limbs to the property line. While generally a crime against nature and aesthetics, I understood this to be within his rights. Concerned about my house, I sent some pictures to a certified master arborist who I had contacted. He assured me that the remaining parts of the tree were still strong and could survive as long as the roots were not severed. My neighbors had taken a great interest in this issue as nobody had wanted to lose a tree. Last week, a few days after the original cutting when I was out of town, I received a picture from one of my neighbors of the builder's tree crew on top of my house cutting back the limbs. Despite this being an open legal matter and my clear objection to any further cutting of the tree, I was not informed of their plans. I had an Airbnb guest in my house at the time, and the builder told my neighbor that they got permission by informing the Airbnb guest that the tree had to be removed because it was dangerous and there was a storm in the Gulf. Dorian, presumably, headed to Houston. Not only was the tree not in danger of damaging my house, as per the master arborist, but I also worked with 2 professional meteorologists who confirmed that there was no indication of inclement weather targeting Houston in the near future. I also took real-time screenshots from the National Hurricane Center as proof. It was simply a lie. I called the police in an effort to get them off my property. The police came, but the officer told me he took no action as he deemed it a civil matter. He did file a report. After the police left, the crew continued to trespass on my property and remove the tree altogether. In terms of numbers, the tree was about 9 feet in circumference at a point 4.5 feet above the ground. The canopy was 72 feet wide. Judging from my most recent electrical bill, I can project that losing the tree will cost me at least $1,000 a year more in electricity. Houston is hot. I also assume that there will be foundation damage to my house in the thousands of dollars as the roots decay and the ground settles. It's more difficult to quantify the aesthetic loss and sense of violation that I felt when receiving pictures of people walking on top of my house, removing something of which I contend to be my shared property. I haven't returned home since the tree was destroyed, and each time I think about it, I get a combination of sadness, stress, and nausea. It's fundamentally changed how I feel about my home. Update. After a little investigation, it turns out the builder and his crew far overstepped their legal rights. The court ordered them to replace the tree, which cost them a tidy sum of money. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.